So,
And wait, you have the spider sense.
spider sense? Yeah.
And you were bit by a spider.
Spider? Yeah.
So, Spider-Man is pretty interesting, eh?
Interesting? What do you mean? Like how he always wanted to get into the Avengers but denied every time for looking too much like a kid or something?
No, I mean scientifically, man. Like how that single bite from that spider altered his DNA and his biological makeup and stuff.
No, not a spider bite.
What do you mean not a spider bite? That's what they say.
And you listen to whatever they say? Of course not. The amount of radiation capable of altering his DNA can only be a result of large-scale nuclear reaction. A retrovirus makes more sense.
You mean that the kind of virus that collect a combination of specific genes from previous hosts and then bind this cocktail of DNA into the next host? Even if it happened completely by chance, how did it affect Peter Parker's body?
I guess it all comes down to energy, metabolism, and ATP production and all.
Okay, so as a chemoheterotroph, Spidey's gotta eat like us, right?
He's not photosynthetic. He's not gonna produce his own glucose, but how could he possibly eat enough to keep up with the energy wasted from his daily skyscraper jumping? He can't just eat all day and do nothing.
No, he can't. Well, when we eat every day, what we truly need is the macromolecules from the foods, glucose, lipid, and polypeptide, right? As ingested, food is passed through our digestive tract, where most of the breaking down of the macromolecules will take place in the small intestine.
And with different enzymes such as amylase, pepsin, bile, maltase, and lipase, as catalysts break down bigger molecule of polysaccharide, polypeptide chain, and lipid down to glucose, amino acid, glycerol, and fatty acid, molecules small enough to be shipped to individual cells for ATP production.
Yeah, but you skipped one.
You're kidding, right? No way.
Cellulose?
Oh, the polysaccharide consisting of a linear chain of several hundred to many thousands of beta 1 to beta 4 linked D-glucose units?
Yeah. See, what people usually omit in their diet is the indigestible cell walls of plants that compose mainly of cellulose, which is also the main ingredient of paper and cardboard, essentially, simply because we don't have the enzyme to properly digest cellulose. But for Spidey, this might be just the source of his bulk energy needs. So in other words, Spidey's diet contains a pretty amount of, cardboard.
So you're saying that like archaea and bacteria, Spidey's got cellulose in his belly?
Now you're talking. Cellulase. It's an enzyme that catalyzes cellulysis, a process that undergoing the breakage of non-covalent interaction present in the amorphous structure of cellulose and the hydrolysis of chains ends to break the polymer into smaller sugars and then another hydrolysis of maybe disaccharides and maybe tetrasaccharides into glucose, and finally Mr. Parker would have acquired hundreds of times more glucose from a normal diet than us, normal, a mutated human, thus supplying the raw, unprocessed energy.
Okay, let's say that theoretically Peter Parker turned part bacteria in his mutation and can fill his duodenum with cellulose. How can he properly process that huge amount of fuel?
Easy. 100-fold mitochondria in his muscle cells.
Oh, right. Little ATP factories where cellular respiration take place. And cellular respiration, in short, is the most effective means to utilize and extract energy from CC bonds as well as NAP+, a highly energetic ion. After the first stage of glycolysis and 6-bond carbon glucose has been broken down to 3-carbon pyruvate acid.
Then it enters the citric acid cycle, producing NADH followed by the electron transport chain, where the vast amount of oxygen are used as a final electron acceptor, forming H2O as a result, and the result from the release of such potential energy, 36 ATP molecules per glucose molecules to be stored and used.
Well, hate to jinx you, buddy, but how will Peter Parker's body transport the amount of oxygen to accommodate the ATP production?
Blood, man, and hemoglobin, like human.
Okay, suppose the mutation accelerated the cellular construction that widens body's arteries and increased his heartbeat. Hemoglobin is still but a polypeptide chain with 4 iron atoms to be bonded with 1 oxygen molecule each.
You're saying...
The unique structure of hemoglobin prohibits it from efficiently binding oxygen in a low oxygen environment like in the capillaries. And Spider-Man needs every last bit of oxygen he has, even in the dark alleys of his body.
Well then, how about myoglobin? Just look at this chart.
Fascinating! Another oxygen binding polypeptide chain that yield high efficiency even under low oxygen presence.
So while the hemoglobin circulates to renew bulk oxygen stream, myoglobin functions more like a reserve, dormant in tissues that provide oxygen surges under rare circumstances.
And that's exactly what Mr. Parker needs.
Now, after all that talk about energy, you're all probably wondering what kind of boring stuff those two guys talking about, right? I mean, wasting our precious time, limited ATP while we concentrate. Well, let me assure you all once and for all, the fun is coming fast. Faster than you can sense it. Now, no comic or movie fan talk about Spider-Man without mentioning his super acute senses, including reflexes, hearing, vision, etc. However, just because a comic writer said all about Spidey is radioactive and hope to get past the keen eye of the scientists, it doesn't mean they'll fool us. Now, let's get scientific. Like all human beings, Mr. Parker's perceptions and actions are all transmitted to and from the CPU, his brain. Now, science has shown that an average brain with its mighty 100 billion brain cells can yield a logical computing power mightier than all computers combined, and has the potential to generate and process thoughts at celestial speed just like that. But here's the question, what slowed us down? The answer lies within us, our nervous system. Now, the nervous system is composed of numerous nerves spread throughout our entire body, and each nervous pathway is in turn composed of neurons, the most basic unit of the nerve cell. As we can see here, the axon of the neuron here is the longest part that is responsible for carrying out the electric potential, which will further be translated into electrochemical information. Now, when an electric potential is imposed on one end of an axon, the free-flowing K plus and Na plus ions within and surrounding the axon will conduct this current to the part where two neurons meet, the presynaptic end, in which contains God knows what how many vesicles containing informative chemicals called neurotransmitters, for example, dopamine. When currents of different magnitudes are fired, different neurotransmitters are therefore released and received by the receptor of the postsynaptic end of the adjacent neuron. Then the information is interpreted as electric potentials again and the journey repeats. Though microscopic, a single alpha neuron presynaptic end can release and retract hundreds of neurotransmitters vesicles at once, thus resulting in a stunning transmission velocity of, over 100 meters per second. Wow. But unlike American citizens, not all neurons are created equal. Another type of neuron, the gamma neuron, that's responsible for the intrafusal muscle that has a much smaller axon cross-section diameter, only 5 to 8 nanometers compared to the 13 to 20 nanometers of the aforementioned one. Now, intuitively, the transmission velocity landed in the mid-tens. Found a connection there? That's right. Larger diameter means more vesicles to release at once and more information to be transmitted between neurons, just like a highway. Therefore, Spider-Man most definitely acquired a gene for super sick neurons after his encounter with that A-bomb spider. I doubt it really exists. There's that amount of radioactive energy. I should probably get that. So, to achieve that kind of reflex, it allows Spider-Man to dodge bullets and deliver hundreds of pieces while avoiding the crazy traffic of Manhattan. Spidey's axon diameter must be in the high solids to achieve that almost instantaneous reaction speed.
With all these super acute senses, however, Peter Parker cannot be the Spider-Man without his weapons. Besides Spider-Man's classic bungee-style webs, he also known for spiding the elegant webs, perfect place for the intimate conversation with Mary Jane.
I think I always knew, all this time, how you really were.
But there's also another amazing aspect of Spider's webs, the incredible strength. We know that Spider-Man not just shoots webs to short his daily commute, he often uses his webbing as a tool of astonishing power. Is the science in the scene believable? As we know, Spider uses spider silk to spin their webs, but not all spider silks are the same. Dragline silk, this kind spiders make for the web's outer rim and spokes and lifeline, and spider man uses to jump around buildings has a tensile strength of roughly 1.3 gigapascal. The tensile strength listed for steel might be slightly higher, 1.65 gigapascal. Oh, by the way, the toughest known spider silk produced by Darwin's bark spider is even over 10 times tougher than Kevlar. But what makes them so tough and flexible? The answer lies in its unique molecular makeup. Dragline silk has, within its protein molecule, different subunits, crystalline-like and spring-like structures. Spider dragline silk is thought to be composed mainly of two proteins, speedjoin 1 and 2. In its primary structure, the amino acid sequence has been optimized over millions of years of biological evolution. But the design principles of spider dragline silk, nature's high-performance fiber, are still largely unknown, in particular for the non-crystalline glycine-rich domains, which form the bulk of the material. Another question people would ask is, how does the Spider-Man climb the wall? Then we need to look into the jumping spiders, a widespread group that hunts prey without building webs, yet they can climb sleek, waxy leaves without a care in the world, except the constant and a million question, worth the dinner? Using sophisticated microscopes, researchers found that the spider's feet were covered by hairs that branched into even finer hairs. The smallest of these, called stedules, appear in astonishing abundance, about 624,000 of them per spider. The researchers measured attraction between one stedules and an atomic force under a microscope, and then they calculated that one spider had theoretically 173 times the adhesive force it would need to hang beneath a leaf. The logical explanation for the attraction force is a close-range atomic attraction called the van der Waals force. If your physics is as rusty as ours, you won't mind remembering that this force grows from electrical attraction between nearby molecules. You might expect the electrons on the outside of the molecule to repel each other. But when electrons move, that creates regions that are moved more or less negative. As a result, there will always be imbalances between negative and more negative charges. So one region is in fact more positive charged than another. Van der Waals forces only work within a couple of nanometers. Otherwise, our world will be very different, much to the detriment of the glue industry. The close-range requirement sees the capabilities of chitin, the material that composes the external skeleton of insects, spiders and other arthropods. Depending on its chemical composition, molecular arrangement, chitin can range from stiff to rubbery. Chitin, in other words, is a smart, biological composite material. Spiders' feathery feet, built with a flexible form of chitin, can conform to surfaces and create a strong van der Waals force.